Hello, I'm Richie Kotzen, and I'm here on behalf of Young Guitar to demonstrate, try out, play through 5 very different overdrive distortion pedals, and they asked me to test them out and give my honest feedback and my honest reaction trying the pedals out for the first time. So let's go. The first one here is called Metal Zone MT2W, and it also says Waza Craft on it, which sounds pretty cool. Here's what the guitar sounds like without the pedal. Right? And then if I turn it on, right? You know, I think what I did there, I got a little bit more body out of it, which is how I would use it. And one of the things is pretty cool. It has a nice sustain, especially at a low volume because the amp is turned really low. So I think that's a pretty strong example of a good distortion overdrive pedal. But we've got, this is more like a scooped kind of, more of a metal sound, I would say. I feel like I want to get into like some real dark death metal when I hear that. So this was the first one I tried. Really had a great screaming kind of lead tone, a lot of sustain, and a lot of control. You know, you have these dual potentiometers here. So there's a lot of variation. There's a switch here. Very cool pedal, and I like the kind of slate gray coloring of it. Pretty cool. Okay. A lot of times when I test the pedal, I like to just hit some random chords because I'm actually listening to the specific tone of what's happening when I play. This kind of reminds me, it's making my amp sound kind of like an old Fender, like a little 10-inch speaker, which is kind of cool. I like that. I like what it's doing to the amp. It's changing the character of the amp, not necessarily you know, creating a lot of distortion chaos, but it is shaping the tone of the amp, making it sound in a way that it normally wouldn't sound without the pedal. So I messed around with the pedal, and this is it's kind of another one of the subtle pedals, but it really is, to me, if I had this in my setup, I would use it to change the coloration of my amp. It's not necessarily something I would step on to do a shredding solo, but certainly it's something I would put on for a certain kind of song that I wanted to reshape the tone of the amp. Let me try and come up with one more setting on it. You know, it really is doing this kind of Fender-y amp kind of thing where it's making it reminding me of like a Bassman in a way too, where I believe that they had a tube rectifier in those amps that kind of had a certain kind, I think they call it like a saggy kind of distortion. So this pedal's pretty cool. It's actually doing some interesting things. I like it. Now, out of all of them, this one was very interesting to me because, first of all, it looks really cool. It has these old retro style knobs, but it really reminded me of like taking at least the amp that I'm using, which is my signature Victory. It kind of took it to the Fender bank, so to speak. When I turned the pedal on, it had an interesting coloration, almost like it made it sound like I suddenly had a tube rectifier in the power stage of the amp. So this pedal would be great for someone that has a specific setup and amp, and they want to change the coloration of the amp during the show for a song or two or what have you. This pedal is called the One Control Jubilee Red AIAB. Kind of an interesting name. So here we are. That's without the pedal. Now let's see what happens when I step on it. Again, we're at a pretty low volume here, and it's a good sound. It's got it's not quite as aggressive as the previous pedal, but it does have a nice sustain. And I didn't turn the gain up or anything like that, so I'm sure we can get more variation out of it. So let's try. So I changed some settings here. I added a little mid-range, and I really like the mid-range knob, particularly the mid-range control, which I turned up, and then I pulled back the volume a little bit because I wanted to keep the same level, and I also turned up a bit of gain. Has a nice sustain. So this pedal is two things. It's little and cute. Okay, so this setting, I turned the gain all the way off, and I cut a little treble back, and I really boosted the mid-range. Let's see what happens with that. Cool rhythm tone. I like it. So once again, this pedal, it's actually two things. It's little and cute. And so I really like that aspect of it. I like that it's small. And this one's very powerful. One of the things I remember is that when you turn the knobs, they're aggressive. They actually really change the tone right away, which is something that I like. I hate pedals where I'm moving something and I feel like nothing's happening. So a lot happens in this tiny little box. So we're looking at the Ovaltone UBS5. It's an Ultra Boost Type S. And here's the guitar without it. And then you put this on. And it does exactly what it says it's supposed to do. It boosts the signal. I like that because my tone normally isn't a very heavily distorted tone. So a pedal like this is appealing to me because it just gives it a little bit more of a percussive response, if you will. So now I'm going to try and come up with my own setting. So now I messed with it a little bit, and I kind of got what I would consider a lead tone for myself. I turned the edge control almost maximum. I pulled back this I think it says fatness. I pulled that back, but I cranked the volume on it. a strong pedal. Okay, so this setting here is, I changed some things around. There's a switch that has smooth or hard. I put it to hard, and there's a high cut that I turned on. It's a cool pedal. It's something that if I was building a board, which I wouldn't be, but if I was, I'd probably have something like that in there. Very clear on how to use it. I like that. I don't like to have to do research to figure out what a control does. There's a high cut switch, there's a normal mode, smooth or hard reactive distortion, I would imagine, a volume control. It's pretty simple, straight ahead, really good boost pedal. So this pedal I'm going to try out. First of all, it's red, which is a good sign. It's called the TDC-U. That's the name of the company. And the pedal itself is called a Creamy Drive 007. So if you're driving Aston Martin and you're a mysterious man, it might be the pedal for you. So that's without it. Turning it on. So far, that's just a stock setting. But it's again, this one's doing what one of the others did, and it's coloring the amp. Now, in this demo, I'm also kind of playing the same kind of thing, because if I do that and I'm changing through pedals, it's giving me an accurate representation of what I'm hearing and what the pedal's doing, as opposed to playing differently. But sometimes some pedals make you play a little different depending on the gain structure. So let's see what this thing can do. Let me try and change the setting as it is and see where we end up. I was trying to get more of a high gain sound out of this pedal, but I turned the gain knob all the way up and I didn't get there. But there's an EQ feature here, and I messed around with the mid-range filter, and that was able to get me into a more singing lead tone. Now I'll tell you something, I like this pedal. I like what's happening here. When I hold a note, you hear the harmonic content, which also partially because I'm playing through a real tube amp, but you can hear the harmonics develop, and it reminds me when you take a glass of wine and you see the stems coming down. That's a sound that you normally don't get in the digital realm. This is an analog pedal. It's giving you that sound along with a proper tube amp. So I'll try one more setting, but so far this seems like a pretty versatile pedal. So what I ended up here with was a sound probably more overdriven than what I would use for rhythm, but in that overdriven sound there's still a sense of clarity. That's something that you can lose sometimes if you get a really overdriven sound and you try to do a rhythm, unless you're playing, you know, death metal or something of that nature, then, you know, it's a little different. But if you're playing intricate, you know, rhythm parts, you can lose a lot of the definition when you have too much gain. This pedal seems to be giving me enough gain, a lot of gain, but keeping definition, which is pretty cool. So another pedal that we have here that I like very much. Okay, this pedal really kind of surprised me for the better. When I first turned it on, you know, I hit the gain knob, and initially I was like, it doesn't seem to be giving me a lot of gain for you know, lead. But then I started messing around up here, and specifically this mid-range filter knob really gave me a really screaming kind of lead tone and a lot of harmonic content, which is something I love. I like when I hit a note and, you know, too many times with something digital, it just stays and it's static and sounds lifeless. With a combination of this with the amp, I hit a note and it started singing, and I could hear the the harmonics kind of developing and changing, which, at least in my experience, only happens when you're using an analog pedal with a tube amp. Well, there you have it, folks. Just went through 5 different overdrive distortion pedals, and yes, they were very different. Hopefully this was an informative video. I actually feel like I learned some things about these pedals, because some of them are really more you would use for, you know, a singing lead tone. Others were really nice to color an amplifier if you're doing a gig where you have to get many different sounds. I could see someone using a pedal of that nature. And one of them in particular was pretty cool because it was very small. I like things that are small and easy to carry. And so anyway, yeah, that's it. I want to thank Young Guitar, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the presentation.